You're listening to the Motiv8d Mindset podcast with Bobby Stein.
When you work with people or you know people that bring out the best in you, set expectations that are high, and inspire you to be the best version of yourself, right? Where you can look at that person and say to yourself, that's someone I want to be like, or I aspire to be like. I'd like to be that person for people that inspires people, right? I would like to be that person that makes them think a little bit harder about, what it is that they want to accomplish in life.
Hello, my name is Bobby Stein, your host of the Motiv8d Mindset podcast, where I share candid conversations with extraordinary folks from all walks of life to discover just what motivates their mindset. Welcome in and thanks for listening. Hey there, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Motiv8d Mindset podcast. I am your host, Bobby Stein, and today I am fortunate enough to be chatting with a fellow that I've known for a number of years now. He's just an outstanding individual with a super work ethic, magnificent people skills. We call him the mayor where I come from. And he's got, like I said, those people skills. He's a personal trainer. He's an entrepreneur. And I'm happy to have my friend Adam Deane join me. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And Adam, how are you, my brother?
Bobby, I'm doing fantastic. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good, thank you. You busy? You staying slammed? What's going on?
Yeah, well, for people that don't know, those of us living in Southwest Florida, we have what's called season and then summer. And I'm wrapping up season. I've probably got another couple of weeks and things will start to slow down. But right now I'm busier than a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. So it's good.
Exactly.
It's good.
Yeah, I've noticed the traffic lightening up a little bit, particularly in our subdivision. All the snowbirds, for the most part, have migrated back north, but the traffic on the main thoroughfares in the interstate has not relented just yet. Have you noticed anything?
Yeah, I think we've started to get a lot more ever since, it seems to me, from COVID. We've got more full-time residents down here, people that came down to get away from that stuff. So I think that contributes to it for sure.
No, definitely. Once upon a time, it was, folks stayed in their lane, typically, yes. Right? They'd come from that northeast area and shoot down the I-95 and, they'd come on the east coast of Florida with the Midwesterners coming down to that corridor to the southwest coast. But I'm seeing a lot of New York plates, Connecticut, New Jersey, and I don't know, man.
Pennsylvania, yeah, absolutely, yeah, a lot of that.
I thought once upon a time that the secret's out, right? That we had it all to ourselves, but
it didn't help that you had several of the publications that start publishing the number one place to live, and Naples kept topping the list. So those sons of bees, really gummed it up for the rest of us.
They did. I thought they shut the door behind me when I got here in '99.
Well,
that was it.
As far as I'm concerned, if we're talking about borders, I think we need to close the Florida-Georgia border. No more. I like it the way it is.
The cease and desist is. I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Let's dive into this for a minute. So, how you feeling? Pain-free, injury-free? I mean, I know for a minute there you were experiencing some difficulty.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's interesting. It's funny, as they say, wisdom comes with age, but also pain comes with age. And and for those of us that, it's interesting because exercise, of course, is what I call the fountain of youth. Everybody's looking for the fountain of youth, and some people find it in a scalpel, other people find it in a needle. I find it in the gym and eating healthy and taking care of your body. But with that said, the reality is that specifically our joints, they're perishable, and I find that over time your body's basically taking receipts. And then at a certain point, it starts cashing receipts. And so I've had a bad hip for the better part of about 6 or 7 years. Had some surgery on it about 2.5 years ago. Thought that was going to correct the problem. Unfortunately, it has not. And I'm going to be having hip resurfacing surgery here this summer as things slow down. But so it's interesting. It's kind of that dichotomy of staying healthy, but at the same time, the overuse of anything. And I try to tell people, and you heard this when you were young, just wait till you're in your 40s, wait till you're in your 50s, wait till your 60s, right? And you're like, yeah, whatever. That doesn't apply to me. It applies to you. I promise it does. We all are going to get older. Stuff's going to hurt. And while I might still have a 12-year-old mindset and my muscles still feel like they're in their 20s, my joints feel like they're in their 80s, right? And so I think that, like with anything, you get busy in life and you prioritize things. And of course, mine's been, weightlifting, mixed martial arts has been a big part of my life for the better part of 30 years. And while these things are wonderful, and for me, they're my, kind of my escape and keep me from going on a 3-state killing spree, right? So you don't see me on the national news, because they help set my mind. You're using things and joints and you're lifting heavy, and unfortunately they do start to wear out. And so I would say that for, a guy my age, mid 50s, I'm still doing pretty well, but, left shoulder surgery a few years back. And so there's the mechanics of that never really recovers to the point that it was previous when it had all what I call the OEME parts in it, the original, manufacturing parts in there. But the hip's bothering me a lot. It's gotten to a point where it affects just about everything that I do, from sitting to standing to sleeping to driving, you name it. So it's time to try to get that fixed. And I found a new surgery. I was going to have a full hip replacement done. And reluctant as always, as any athlete is, because, when you, again, replace those OME parts in your body, the reality is they're not going to be the way that they were. They're just not. You can't replace what God put in you, right? Once you start swapping that stuff out. And so, while they've made tremendous strides in joint replacement, when you do a full hip replacement, you're replacing bone, you're actually taking out your actual natural hip bone. And so there were going to be limitations to what I could do. And that concerned me because I'm active between, like I said, MMA, heavy weightlifting. I'm heavy into tactical training. I go out and do a lot of shooting and jumping and running and that type of thing. And I wanted the ability to continue to do that type of stuff. And so, almost serendipitously, because I was reluctant to do the full hip surgery, I had a friend of mine just send me a video. He said, how's your hip? Kind of having the conversation we had. And I said, I'm looking at doing a full hip replacement. He says, why don't you do hip resurfacing surgery? I said, I've never even heard of that. And I get a video. It was actually a Joe Rogan podcast with the professional wrestler, who was it? I'm trying to think who the professional wrestler was, but anytime, big time professional wrestler from about 20 years ago. And he had this hip resurfacing surgery because they said he needed a full hip replacement. He was at the height of his career, making millions of dollars. And they basically said, once you have the hip replacement, you can't be doing this stuff anymore, jumping off of ropes and all that type of thing. So he was introduced to this hip resurfacing surgery, and it saved his career, allowed him to do it for another 10 years, and he's 20 years into it. And so it's a lot less invasive. Instead of actually replacing your natural bone, they just basically take the acetabulum out, they grind it down, they put basically a metal covering, an alloy covering over it. They basically grind out the hip joint and put an alloy head in there and then put it back together. So it's all still your original bone. And so, from the standpoint of it working more naturally in your body, it works much more naturally, alleviates, from what I can see in the research I've done, 100% of the pain. And so I'm excited. But of course, what's interesting about it, talking about medicine, health, those types of things, I'd never once had an orthopedist ever say this to me. And God knows in my life, with all the stupid stuff that I've done, I've been to my share of orthopedists, right? Because I'm, whether it's crashing motorcycles, fighting.
I remember that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Bad motorcycle accident 7 years ago. Again, I don't claim to be the smartest person in the world. Intelligent, but not smart. Two different things, right?
Simple, but easy, not easy.
Yeah. I got to delineate between. I found out about this. And so now that I've done some research, I guess it's a little disappointing that someone in the medical profession hadn't told me about it before, and I had to find out through a friend. But now that I found out about it, there's limitations to it, meaning that you have to be under the age of 60, which thank God I still am. I'm right there, but I'm bucking up to it. And number two, you have to have great bone density, which for me, luckily, was told years ago by my oral surgeon that he had to stand on my face to remove my wisdom teeth, because he said he's never seen bones so dense in someone's head. And so the bone density thing's there. And so I meet the criteria for it, and I'm researching it. Fortunately, again, it's funny how things work out. The foremost doctor that does this is up in New York, up in Manhattan. It just so happens that the specialty surgery group that is in New York, which is very well known up there, they are literally opening up a wing of it right here in Immokalee at NCH. It's the new part of the building. Yeah, I mean, just one of those weird things, right? Never even heard of the surgery.
Right? No accidents.
No accidents in life. Things happen for a reason. I put this thing off, right? And then I have a friend of mine who was in the medical field, and they're like, oh, they're opening this new specialty surgery group down here. And I'm like, you're kidding? Sends me the information. So the reality is, again, and I think this is a life lesson, sometimes it pays to be patient, to wait, to not necessarily jump at the very first thing that might be presented to you, right? Doing research, looking at different things, because I think in our, what I call our instant pudding society today, with our phones and internet, and it's like, it's like it used to be that you got fed through a garden hose. Now you're fed through a fire hose, right? And Bobby, there's so much information out there, and everybody wants everything instantly, right? Whether it's getting big muscles, or being a scratch golfer, or, being wealthy for that matter, or being, financially successful, whatever it happens to be. They think that is going to happen overnight because that's what they see. That's not reality. We all know that, right? Anything that that you're going to pursue, and if it's going to be worth it, you have to work at it, and it takes time. And it's like the old saying, every overnight success, it was 20 years in the making, right? He's an overnight success. 20 years earlier, he was starting this whole, progression. He was starting this progression. And so the surgery is hopefully going to happen this summer. I'm in the process of trying to get that done. I'm sorry, that was a very circuitous route to your question of how I'm feeling health wise, but, with the exception of my hip and just, being a little bit, mentally unstable, I'm doing well, my friend. I'm doing well. So.
Standing on your face to pull out the extracted wisdom. You met the criteria.
It's a funny story, because when I got done, I called him a day or two later. He calls me and he's like, "How do you feel?" And I said, "It feels like someone punched me in my face. Is it supposed to hurt this badly?" And he says, "Well, Adam, I usually don't have to stand on someone's head to get the teeth out, so that might be the reason you're getting a little more residual pain than anyone else might." So it was interesting, but it's helped me out. I can say I've never had a broken bone in my life. So for bone density, I guess that's one of the benefits. So.
Well, that's awesome, and it's funny how you say not to leap right after at the first opportunity, and and it is disappointing when somebody in that profession or that field is not either aware or doesn't recommend it, perhaps because it's expedient not to. You don't really know, but the idea that you were patient and you took your time, it's either patient or you're lazy, but either one.
Right. Yeah.
But being patient, and it's very serendipitous that the individual from New York, the renowned surgeons up there, they're going to have a satellite office down here in your backyard. So I'm super glad that you're getting this addressed. And I'm surprised in that motorcycle accident that you experienced a number of years ago that you didn't break any bones. I mean, geez,
well, okay, so crazy. I take that back. I did fracture my rib cage, but with the exception, I've not broken any major bones in my arms, my legs, those types of things. But yes, I did actually fracture my rib cage in that. But that was it, just fractured rib cage. The biggest thing with that was the collapsed lung. So that hurt a lot more than the actual fractured ribs. So.
You still ride a bike? You still have one or no?
I do still own it. Probably should sell it because it doesn't get a lot of use. It's interesting. started to ride motorcycles when I was a kid. Grew up in the rural South, right? So we had a lot of, backcountry roads, those types of things, woods and things to ride in. And so I started riding motorcycles when I was about 7, dirt bikes, and then graduated up to road bikes when I got into my 20s. And so I've been riding bikes for the better part of my entire adult life. And look, did I always use good judgment? Was a little aggressive, and I was, because it's adrenaline rush, right? Things that you're looking for to get that kind of feedback that everyone's different, but that was one of the things I needed, was just that adrenaline,
Sure.
that adrenaline pump. And it'd gone the better part of 30 plus years of never having a serious accident. Now, not that I hadn't been in some, very close calls, but, it was interesting. Unfortunately, what that did, is talking about getting lazy or lax and not respecting the motorcycle. The reason that accident happened is I just started to take it for granted, right? And so instead of having the discipline, right? Discipline in whatever facet of your life it is, and it doesn't matter whether it's discipline for something that may be difficult, not necessarily enjoyable, to discipline in things that you enjoy, whether it's handling, weapons, riding motorcycles. A lack of discipline is always going to come back to bite you in the ass. And that's the reason I got in the motorcycle accident, was a lack of discipline. I just became undisciplined on the bike, lost my focus for a split second, and luckily didn't die, and wasn't paralyzed or anything like that. But it was a bad motorcycle accident. And
a wake-up call, I'm sure.
Yeah, and so it really did. And unfortunately, it's a double-edged sword, because it made me, again, get that focus, but it has unnerved me to the point that I don't really feel comfortable riding anymore.
I was going to ask you about your confidence, because I know when that happens, it's you're unshakable, you're bulletproof up to that point, and a simple lapse in focus or judgment or whatever can really shift the table. Yeah,
it can. And the old saying, you got to get back up on the horse and ride it. I've done that, but there's a very small sense of unease now when I ride, whereas before I never had that. And so, that can help or hurt you, in the sense that it does help you to maintain focus. But when you're so worried about something, sometimes you can cause that to come to fruition, almost, if you will, right? Like, you're so focused on it.
You remember, being an avid football fan, like when a guy thinks about or entertains, even any pro athlete on any level, a contact sport in particular, when they consider retirement, what happens, right? That creeps in, and it's kind of like a subconscious something that goes on there, and they're more susceptible to injury. And that's why you see guys that they hit the brakes, that's it. But the guys that linger on there tend to get themselves banged up. Adam, I had I rode a bike and dirt bikes as a kid like yourself, and I grew up, and I just had, my wife and I would ride our bike all the time down here. We'd go to the beach and every place down here. It was just wonderful. But the more, and from a driving standpoint, not noticing other motorcycles, that was concerning to me, because here I am, an avid cyclist. And if I'm having a difficult time discerning them in traffic, what about some, cottonhead, elderly person that's, not paying attention? So, we wound up selling it. So,
and take it a step further, Bobby. Even think about just the proliferation of cell phones, right? How many people are doing this while they're on their cell phone because they're listening to the latest podcast. Hopefully it's yours, right? That they're listening to the Motiv8d Mindset, but not in their car. But you know what I'm saying? So there's so many more things to take your attention away, right? Divergence, that type of thing. And so I got to a point where I felt that you kind of pick and choose. And again, the old wisdom thing coming with age, it's like, I don't need to be as aggressive now riding it. I can find other ways to get adrenaline rushes from that. And the reality is Southwest Florida, talking about the older age driver, the person that's on their phone, that type of thing. It just came to the point where the risk reward ratio, right? And again, that's in anything in life. It just wasn't there for me anymore. And so
what's that saying, Adam? That saying that says sometimes the wear and tear on a chicken's ass ain't worth the price of the egg.
That's right. No, that's absolutely right. And that's where really what it became about with me. And that's not to say that, I've thought about, because I was always into the sport bikes. They're fast, they're made, those things don't really start to actually operate until you're like at 80 miles an hour, right? Which is the point, right? So I've thought about at some point, maybe getting a cruising bike, kind of, I think like what you and your wife have, where, you're, again, still, you have the motorcycle. It's the feeling of being unbridled, having no sorry, but it's not. There's not the constant, little voice in your head going, "Go faster, right?" And pushing the envelope and those types of things. So,
one of the things we did, Adam, we got a little Jeep Wrangler with a bikini top. So you take that off the bikini top, the little convertible car we got. So it kind of like gives us a safety buffer. And still gets us that, there's nothing quite like a CBR 9, but there's nothing like that.
Yeah, CBR 1000, a Hayabusa 1200. There's nothing that's going to beat the actual adrenaline rush of being able to 0 to 60 in 1.6 seconds. I mean, everyone needs to be able to do that, right? I mean,
absolutely. It's mandated. Right, it's a necessity. So I was talking with a mutual friend of ours from the gym, Anthony Pruitt. Probably pound for pound, probably the strongest individual.
Strongest dude on the planet. Yeah.
I am serious. When you're dividing the weight that he lifts into his body weight into the weight he lifts, there's nobody like him.
It's unreal.
But he was saying,
I call him a mutant because there's just it shouldn't be natural to be able to do that. So.
No, and we were chit chatting on the podcast a couple weeks back. Your name came up, and we were talking, and he said, "You know what? Every time I pass Adam, he says, iron sharpens iron. Iron sharpens iron, brother." Yeah. And he loves the fact, and as I do too, the fact that you are so, where did that saying come from for you, and what significance does it hold?
So that's a great question. So iron sharpens iron is one of my favorite sayings. I've used it for years. Whoever came up with that, brilliant. I think that when you work with people, or people that bring out the best in you, set expectations that are high, and inspire you to be the best version of yourself, right? Where you can look at that person and say to yourself, that's someone I want to be like, or I aspire to be like. And, I think that at least for me in life, what I've found is that, we talk about feeling fulfilled and filling your cup and all the things that that do that. And listen, everybody has different things that do that for them. What I have found is certainly as I've aged, I think it's more of a maturation process, is that I'd like to be that person for people that inspires people, right? I would like to be that person that makes them think a little bit harder about, what it is that they want to accomplish in life, or to be the person to say that, Adam and I had a conversation. I saw Adam do this and it inspired me. I mean, to me, there's nothing more fulfilling personally than to get that accolade. Money doesn't do it, cars, women, whatever that, to know that you've had an impact on someone's life. That's the best story I can one of the best stories I can tell you is friends from years ago when I was married, and it was a friend of mine, and he got into the family business, and was making a good living and everything, but he still wasn't fulfilled. He wasn't satisfied, and he basically said to me, he's like, I'd like to maybe try to get into real estate, buying and selling and development. And I said, then do it. And he's like, what do you mean? And I said, then you do it, man. You get out there. I said, you're going to make mistakes. I said, you're probably going to have more failures than you have successes, and that's okay, right? And let me say this, because I think there's this misconception that if you're passionate, hard work, you relentless energy, that doesn't guarantee you your success in that, and that's okay. Sometimes it's just not meant to be, and that is okay, right? I mean, I've had certainly more business failures than I've had successes in my life, right? And these were things that I was significantly passionate about. These are things that I thought if I just put my mind to it, and I see podcasters and people that do inspirational type stuff, and you can do anything you want if you put your mind to it. Yes and no. You got to temper that, because what that does is ultimately does set you up for failure, because if you firmly believe in that and then you do ultimately fail, then you're like, well, wait a second.
Where's that
I
leave
put
you?
my mind to it and it didn't work out. All that does is present another opportunity as a learning experience to say, okay, what did I do in that situation? And so just because you put in the hard work, just because you have the passion for it, doesn't guarantee that it's going to be successful. And that's okay. As long as you can step away from it and said, I put, 110%, I did what was required of me and it just
Left
didn't work out.
everything.
And let's say this, Bobby, here's another thing. And listen, God bless people that think that they're the masters of the universe and they're like, I worked harder, I'm smarter, whatever. The reality is, seriously, the reality is there's luck involved. There's people helping you, right?
Timing.
And timing is huge, and there's a book that I read, and of course my old mind now is getting to the point I remember, but there was a book that I read, and it'll come to me, of course, once the podcast is over. But basically what it talked about is it was talking about Bill Gates. It was talking about Wayne Gretzky. It was talking about that had they been born just 5 years earlier or 5 years later, they wouldn't be who they are because either the technology didn't exist or the opportunity wouldn't have been available. And so timing, which again, we don't have control over. And so what I like to say is control what you can control, which is not everything. And then whatever else happens. As long as you can control what you can control, then you've done what you need to do to make it happen. Right. And so I think that, back to your question, people, whether it's Anthony, yourself, who I've been blessed to know, I've had some great people in my life, that, either through inspiration or just the ability to, inspire through words, work ethic, whether it's through the gym or their business or the things that they do, has helped me to be or to aspire to be a better person, right? Now, does that mean I'm not, make mistakes? I sure do. Everybody, that's a human. It's a human condition, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we all have our foibles. We all have things that you do, and you try your best. And if it works out, outstanding. If it doesn't, you learn from it and you move on. So, that has been a very important, I think, learning aspect of my life is that there's a lot of different variables that are involved in success, and however you define success, because for different people it's different. When I was younger, I defined success by my material possessions, right? Like, how much money I had, what type of house I lived in. As I got older, it's now become, what are my relationships, right? What are my relationships that I have? Spending time, making memorable type things, right? As opposed to, money and houses and cars, they're great, but at the end of the day, they don't fill my cup like my dogs do. They don't fill my cup like my family does. I lost my mom this year.
Yeah, I'm sorry about
which
that.
was tough.
Yeah.
And it really crystallized for me that you take for granted the people that mean the most to you until they're gone. And so what it made me really think about is that as opposed to material possessions and the things that, they make you feel good temporarily, it's the relationships with the people that mean something to me is what really fills my cup. And so what I've identified in my life is that has become my focal point is the relationships, the time spent, doing things that are memorable, making memorable type events. And so I think your perspective changes based on life events that happen to you. And when you get life events like that, it does help to crystallize what really becomes important in your life. And so, and that varies for everybody. So it's not to put judgment out. If making money is your number one, hey, God bless you, do you. But just for me, it's changed over the years for what I find to be like the things that are really important to me. So. Yeah.
Great answer. A lot to unpack there, and we'll try to touch on some of those points. I think first and foremost, you're absolutely right with the wisdom and the age and the time. As that passes, Adam, the priorities shift. Losing a loved one like your mom, I'm so sorry to learn that. It's very difficult, very tough. And to your point, you really don't. And what it really sharpens and heightens in my mind is that I got to pay attention in the here and now to the people that
Right.
matter most, because
You-
I don't want to be
Bobby,
looking on your back.
point.
Do not want to be looking on the other side of that with like, oh, shit, man, I squandered that, in chase of in the pursuit of some quote unquote dream or something. And then getting back to your point, Adam, about being an inspiration to people. I always have role models. I think we all do, right?
Mm.
To one degree or another. And as I've matured, I've looked to be that one who encourages, inspires, is a man of my word. I'm try to act with integrity, of good character, of good reputation rather. And, success for one is not always it for another. I heard a quote, and I keep it close to my heart. It's by Earl Nightingale. He said it back in the late 50s. He said his definition of success was the progressive realization of a worthwhile goal. Meaning, yeah. Adam, if you've got a business venture, whether you've failed 10 times and succeeded twice in the past in the rearview mirror or not, if you're pursuing an objective, by Earl's standards and his definition, you're successful. And right. You're the kind of guy that always has something you're going for, whether it's, whatever it may be. And super proud of you. I'm speaking actually with Adam Deane. You can find Adam over on the Instagram platform at Alpha Dog 9. Give him a follow. Check him out. You get to see a little stuff offline. You'd be glad you did. Adam's just solid people. I'm so glad to know you, my brother. What's going on with the dogs now? You had, I know you had Rotties in the past, didn't you?
Yeah, well, Rotties are my chosen breed, but it's funny through the pandemic, right? When we had all that nonsense going on, found that, you were staying home. And so the person I was seeing at the time, wanted to start, doing some, fostering, right? Let's foster some dogs. I'd always just had a Rottie, a single Rottie. And so we got into fostering dogs. What I found out is I am a horrible foster in the sense that I'm a foster failure, meaning that once I bring the dog in, man, and that thing imprints on me and attaches, forget about it. It's like he's not going anywhere, right? And so I had this dog that we got, and he imprints on him, fully under the auspices of that I'm going to, find a good home for this dog. I'm just giving him a temporary place to live. Shit, man, I went to go give him away and was literally like in tears, right? Breaking down,
sobbing like a baby.
Sobbing like a little bitch. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't. And they're like, what? I'm like, you can't do this. I said, I can't give this dog away. And so inevitably I've ended up now with 4 dogs, right? So I've got 4 dogs. I got a pack. And, and it's funny, again, talking about the things that become important in your life. And so what's great is that these dogs obviously rely on me, right, for everything. And, I'm a big believer that, you give what you get, and that's never been more illuminated than my relationship with my dogs. And what I mean by that is that dogs are their very essence. They're again, this is just my personal opinion. They're the only sentient being that is truly capable of unconditional love. Most Absolutely. Of us, there's always a condition, right? And that's not a bad thing, but right, for most people, there's some love, there's a condition in there somewhere. But with dogs, right, there's no condition. They just love you regardless. That's the old joke that says, lock your wife and your dog in the trunk of your car for an hour, open the trunk up an hour later and see who's happy to see you, right? And the dog's going to be like, oh my God, they're going to be so excited. They're going to be like, oh, it's like the best, right? Your wife, of course, is going to want to divorce you.
She wants to kill you.
Yeah, she wants to kill you. And so
what's that bumper sticker I said, "Dear Lord, let me be half the person my dog thinks I am."
Thinks I am. And it's funny, not to get totally biblical on you, but I do think there's funny things if you spell dog backwards, it's God. And that really resonates with me. Things like that, because I do think that dogs are angels without wings. They've been put here on earth to really teach us the value of unconditional love and loyalty, and the things that all of us should aspire to be, right? To your point about that bumper sticker. And so I can have a long day. I'm strung out, and it's like, 4 dogs they're a lot of work, right? They're like kids, right? But with teeth. And, I get home and you take one look in the eyes of those dogs and the way that they look at you, and the fact that
you are their world.
You are their world, right? And, I heard it one time. I wish I could say that I found this, but when your dog's at home, they don't have Instagram. They're not watching TV. They're not talking to their best friend. They are literally waiting for you to get home. And so I might get home at 11 o'clock at night and I'm spent. I've had a long day. And those dogs, all they want to do is be with me and go for a walk. And the last thing I want to do is go for a walk, but I'm just tired. But you know what I do? I buck up, I saddle them up, and I go take them for a walk. And the amount of residual joy that I get back. It is, Bobby. It's like, it literally, it feeds my soul, right? I mean, it's just, and when again, we talk about the things that have become important to me, things that are important, getting home to those dogs, right? Getting home and doing things with my dogs, is one of the things that, is the highlight of my day. Yeah, and, and learning from them, the way that they give me the unconditional love and trying to be, as you say, half the person my dogs think that I am.
Just half.
And I can tell you what, Bobby, if we all lived that way, the world would be a hell of a lot better place. It would just be a much more forgiving, loving place. And so that's not to say that, you have to do things sometimes that you don't necessarily want to do. But ultimately that's because humans aren't dogs, right? So,
yeah, it's I love our pup. I mean, for all the reasons you just stated, and you know what the other thing is, Adam, they live 8, 10, 12 years, 14 years if you're lucky.
If you're lucky.
And so their whole experience is really compressed. And if we're going to dog them and not pay attention to them when they're really crying out for that, like you said, they're not scrolling all day because they don't have that ability. If we withhold that love from them, it's really unfair to that creature. And I just love. So let me shift gears a little bit, since you mentioned the biblical. And you're obviously a man of faith.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, how important is it that you have that faith and lean on it? And can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So for me, it's interesting because, and however you decide to manifest your faith, that's up to you. If you need to go to church to do that, that's great. If it's reading the Bible every day, wonderful. If it's telling people about your faith, however you need to manifest it, I think that's extremely important. For me, it's with faith, it can't be seen, touched, felt, right? It's a deep belief that there is something greater than yourself. And I think that for me, the teachings, whatever your faith is, whatever God you believe in, I happen to be Christian, and so I believe in Jesus, his Savior, and that there is a God up there that created us, created the universe. And so I think that one of the most centering things for me to kind of bring me back to reality is that there's something bigger than me. And at the end of the day, if you believe that, what we do down here is important, but ultimately it's what it's going to lead to after we leave here, right? This vessel that is our human form and our soul, if you believe in a soul. And dogs have taught me a lot about soul, right, too, because you look and you can see their soul. And so I think that, unfortunately, there's been, I think, a getting away from faith. It's made to be one of these things where anybody that's Christian or has a deep-seated faith is somehow some type of
Demonized.
Zealot, and the reality is that if you really ascribe to the teachings of Jesus, it's about acceptance and love and all the things that everybody purports that they are when they really aren't. And again, do I have my foibles? Yeah, it's because I'm human. It is the human condition. And so I find that prayer, which is part of my everyday, to take time. And we're so busy in our lives, and there's, we can make excuses for everything. But one of the things that I do every day without any type of excuse.
Non-negotiable.
It's non-negotiable. I pray every day, whether it's for 2 minutes or 20 minutes. I find time to get quiet and pray. And, it's interesting because, again, the way you look at faith and our society driven by success and those types of things, I don't pray for God to give me anything. I thank God for what He's given me, right? And
Amen.
When I pray, it's not to go into all the specifics because a lot of that's a private conversation that I have between me and my God. But the first thing I do is I thank Him for giving me another day. Because at the very least, if you truly believe in the higher power, He has that ability to take that away at any time. And so that's how I open, and then, I try to go in and thank Him for all the abundant blessings that I have, that we all have. I mean, we're lucky enough to live in the greatest country in the world. As much as there's so many people out there that want to try to,
Right.
lambaste and say bad things. We live in the greatest country in the world. I saw a clip the other day from a comedian, I don't know his name, but he was talking about the fact, as a simple example, the very fact that you can get up and get in a hot shower every day. Do you realize how lucky you are? 50, 60 years ago, even in this country, you couldn't do that. The reality of being able to go 5 minutes in any direction from your house and get food, right? 100 years ago, you had to hunt. You had to go out. If you didn't kill something or you weren't growing your own fruits and vegetables, you didn't eat, right? And so the reality is, amid all the other, perceived chaos and everything, and life's difficult. Don't get me wrong. Life is hard. It's not easy.
You're not ignoring it.
No,
Right.
I'm not ignoring it. But what I'm basically saying, and God never promised you an easy life. I mean, if you really read the book and you look at, there's nothing in there about a promise of an easy life. The promise is the afterlife, right? That's the reward, right, for a harder life. And what He talks about is perseverance, hard work, all those types of things that make you a better human, that make you a net contributor to society as opposed to someone that is a net user or taking from society, right? And again, I think if we all ascribe to that, the world would be a much better place. It's, no one's responsible for you. You're responsible for yourself and ultimately going out and being a productive human, productive member of society. And I think that, when you read scripture or you read those types of things, it really drives home that you strive to be that person, and there's something that should be guiding you. And that's really what religion is about, guiding you to be better, to do better. And you're going to fall on your sword and you're going to do things that you regret. But at the end of the day, that if you at least are trying to ascribe to the values that are set by, at least the religion I follow in Christianity, that you are trying to be a better person. You're constantly evolving. Because if you're not constantly evolving, what's the point, Bobby, right? I mean, we're all imperfect. Yeah. We're all imperfect. I'm not, my name's not Jesus Christ. Your name's not Jesus Christ. That's the reason He was sacrificed for our sins, because they knew that we were flawed, imperfect individuals. And so the best that I can do is to try to at least ascribe to the philosophy of being a better person and doing the things that, make me better and make the people around me better. And so that's really kind of my philosophy when it comes to religion. And again, by no means am I perfect. I'm very far from it, but I'm a work in progress, and I'm constantly trying to, to make myself a better person. And, hopefully, as I believe it, there's that reward in the afterlife, and I'm going to see my mom again, and I'm going to see my pets again, and I'm going to see all those things that were near and dear to me and value in my heart. And there's something beyond this life that exists, right? And so I firmly believe in that. So
well said. I agree with you. I totally do. Getting back to the naysayers about, even though we have all these conveniences at our fingertips, essentially, literally, if you have, I read, $5,000 to your name, you are wealthier than 50% you are in the top 50% of wealth in the world.
Yeah.
Because of your third world, these places that absolutely have anything. So I love how you say you don't ask for it because you don't really need anything, right? You don't ask the Lord. You don't ask the Lord for favor other than the fact that that you stay healthy and so on and so forth. But you
good
thank
health for
him.
my family and friends, the people that I care about, but
But
I'm not asking for material things. There's none of that. I thank him for the things again that we talked about. Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, you're right, Bobby.
No. But you lead with gratitude. You lead with thankfulness. Adam, it's so funny because I take 20 minutes a day. I've made it a ritual, and using that word not non-negotiable again. It's not negotiable. Every morning as we come up to that light alpha state, and sleep and coming into beta, and we're a little drowsy and everything, I try to be conscious of the fact to say thank you, and then I'll literally set a timer, or I won't set the timer because when it goes off, it gives me, it startles me out of my meditative prayerful state.
Right.
But I'll mindfully say I want 20 minutes, and I start with thank you for this pillowcase that is so warm on my head. I mean, if I am to count my blessings in terms of material things and things that are intangible, all the blessings and the gifts, the relationships, it's immeasurable. I can't, they're exhausting. And I think that when we do that, as individuals, and we practice gratitude, I think that just opens the door for more of the same, because what we focus our attention on, Adam, and I think you'll agree, that's what expands. Where our attention goes, energy flows. And I want to put my energy on the blessings that I've had, the blessings that are to come, and relationships. You touched on it earlier. I think that relationships matter. I mean, it's all about that. What benefit a man if he gains the whole world materialistically and loses his soul in the process?
Exactly.
So you can't share it. You can't share that yacht ride or that Bentley ride with no friends. I mean, if you've alienated everybody at the expense of your getting, then that's short-sighted. So and I think that comes, like you alluded to earlier, I think that comes with age and maturation. 30, 40 years ago, I was balls out looking for, all those things that you mentioned. And that was my driver. And I love how you say iron sharpens iron, which is a biblical statement, by the way. It's in the scripture. Is you are looking to be an inspiration for people, much like you looked up to individuals when you were being, in your formidable years. There's a lot of people out there that are hungry and they're searching and they're thirsty. And a smile, a simple acknowledgement. That's one thing that you are outstanding at. I mean, without no shitting, okay? You have time. You make time for everybody. That leaves such an impression on me, and it always has. And I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. I think it's a wonderful quality. And, enough of that for now, because I got to ask you this. You grew up in Mississippi.
Let me say one thing, Bobby. Keep that thought. I want to say the one thing about the gratitude thing, because I do think that people sometimes, and I have this conversation with my girl that I'm with now, Leanne. She's wonderful, most amazing person on the planet. She's a sweetheart. Again, I learn a lot from her. But the gratitude thing, because I do want to touch on this, Bobby, because I think I had an ex that I dated, and her thing, and it's interesting because this is how people think. She's like, well, she would say to me, I got good karma today. And I'm like, but what do you mean by that? And she goes, well, I did something good for somebody, so that gives me good karma. And I'm like, it's not an ATM machine. That's not how it works. You don't do something good with the expectation that something good is going to happen. You do something good because it's the right thing to do. And so, just to your point, Bobby, because I hear this, and listen, I understand a lot of people, they want to make people feel good, and I get that, but the reality is that if you're doing something good because you expect something good in return, that's not the reason to do it. You do it because it fills your cup just internally. It's not because something down the road good's going to happen to you, because listen, bad things happen to good people all the time. And if they didn't, the people, saints and sin, they'd be the ones that would live forever and they would have all the riches. I know so many people that are complete assholes that are financially set. And then I know some of the people that are the salt of the earth that struggle financially. And so, when we talk about that gratitude, you have it, but you have to do it for the right reasons, right? It has to be because it's important to you. It's not because it's not like I'm doing the right thing because I expect to get something in return. So the example I would give is, as I've had my closest friend, he's my closest friend. He needed something one time and he basically said, look, I'll get it back to you. I said, I'm giving it to you with the expectation that you'll never get that back to me. And I don't need it back from you. That's not why I'm doing this. It's because you're important to me. You're in a time of need. And you know what? He did eventually. It took a lot longer than he expected, and I'm grateful that he got it back. But if he never got it back to me, it wouldn't have affected my relationship at all. It would have been like, the reason I did that was because you're important to me. And you being able to get through a tough situation, if I can help in any way to do that. So just to the gratitude thing, because I do think that people say, well, I don't understand, I'm a good person and nothing good's happening to me. Again, as it says in the Bible, just because you're doing the right things God didn't promise you an easy life. And so you need to have gratitude just because, be thankful for the things you have without any expectation of anything in return for it. And so I think I just wanted to say that, because I hear a lot where people will, think that, well, I'm doing this. Well, that's the wrong reasons. You do it because you genuinely feel in your heart and who it is, you make up that it's the right thing to do. So anyway, sorry to get on my soapbox there, but,
not at all. I think it harkens back as we mature through this experience, right? This in our flesh suit.
Yeah.
Right? I think that we become more grateful. That doesn't necessarily ring true for everybody, but I think a lot of us who have ears to hear do follow that precept.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for you. So.
Well, thank you, brother. I'm so much. Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt. You were saying something about growing up in Mississippi.
Mississippi, I was going to, we're really finding out what motivates the mindset of my good friend, Adam Deane. Once again, find him on the Instagram platform at AlphaDog9. Check him out. You'll be glad you did. He's an animal lover. He's a man with a mission. He's on purpose. He's driven for all the right reasons, as you're hearing, and you'll get more of that over there. So look him up, seek him out, check him out. He will give you a follow back, I'm sure, because he's just that kind of guy. He's this kind of guy, though, too, and I got to ask why. You were born in Mississippi, and then you circuitously, like you said earlier, found your way to Southwest Florida. How the hell do you root for somebody like the Philadelphia Eagles?
Well, okay, so let's say I'm actually born in Texas, so I'm a Texas boy. Moved to Mississippi, which is where I grew up. So, my formative years were spent in Mississippi. Made my way out to Los Angeles, Southern California, and then came back to Florida. The reason for me making it to Southern Florida is, at the time I was living in LA, went through a Category 5 earthquake at the time out in Northridge, and scared the shit out of me, right? Stuck in the house I was living in, had to literally like axe the door to get out kind of thing. And I thought, man, I don't like this like no warning kind of shit where at 3 a.m. the refrigerator's falling over, the roof is collapsing in, and I could have died. So I kind of took that as a sign to make a change. And it's interesting, Bobby, because when I moved to Florida, I moved here because I had family here, but it was temporary. I mean, in my mind, it was temporary. I'm like, I'll move there until I figure out what I want to do, and it stuck. And so that was back in 1995, and I've been here ever since. And again, it's been a great place. Yeah, it's 30 years I've been here. So that's kind of how I ended up here in Southwest Florida. So,
but your rooting interest for
Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, sorry. So my mom's family is from Yardley, Pennsylvania, which is right outside of Philadelphia.
You are kidding me. That's where I'm from.
My sister and my brother-in-law live in New Hope, and my
Beautiful
uncle.
Little town.
Yeah,
Beautiful little
right.
town.
My uncle on my mom's side is in Titusville, New Jersey, which is right across the Delaware River from Yardley, so it's right outside of Philly. And then, interestingly enough, my dad's side of the family is from Swickley, Pennsylvania, which is over on the Pittsburgh side. And so I just have a contingency of Pennsylvania folk in the family, and so I grew up fortuitously or unfortuitously, I guess, depending on how you look at it, having the Eagles on a lot. And so ended up being my team. As I say, certainly been a lot better in the last 10 years than it was the preceding, 40 years before they started actually winning championships. So, but that's how I ended up an Eagles fan. So
I knew there had to be a connection. I grew up in Bucks County, Pennsylvania,
Yep.
in southern New Jersey as well. And so, I root for that laundry. Just it's been instilled with me. I as a kid growing up, I used to follow all the teams, the Steelers, the Cowboys, the Rams, name it. I knew all the players, but I still have a rooting interest, and they won a Super Bowl too, which was great. So
yeah, well, we've got a couple of Lombardis now, so we were not the only team in the NFC East to have not won any Super Bowls. Thank God, we got that monkey off of our backs. So.
How about Saquon Barkley, man? Is that guy amazing or what?
Let me tell you, I really believe that he was the driver for Philadelphia's success this year. I think talking about all the qualities you and I've just talked about, I think he's got a quiet confidence, obviously generational talent from the standpoint of his ability to make plays, athleticism, that type of thing, and just positive guy, right? I mean, he's one of these guys that he doesn't
adversity
he played for an organization that didn't really value him. He gets a shot in Philadelphia and goes out and makes the most of it. But it goes back to what we talked about, Bobby. I mean, as generationally talented as he is, it takes more than just yourself. When he was at New York, he set some good stats and, he did some things, but he came to a team where they've got the best offensive line in football. He came to a team where he's got the two of the best wide receivers, one of the best tight ends.
Too.
The defense, right? And so, again, those are the things that were out of his control. He can only control how hard he runs the ball, his attitude, right? The other things had to fall into place, timing, the ability to get, signed in Philadelphia, the team that signed him, right? There's an interesting story about, if we're talking football, Larry Zonka, great running back for the Miami Dolphins. And he talked about, they're like, talk about your success. And he goes, what about it? And they're like, well, how did you accomplish what you accomplished? And he said, I was just lucky, man. And they're like, well, what do you mean? And he said, the Dolphins, of course, drafted at the top of the draft because they were horrible. He says, so I had no choice where I was going, right? And they drafted me, the number 1 pick or the number 2, I can't remember. He says they subsequently, the same year that they drafted me, brought Don Shula in to be the head coach. We know Don Shula, the winningest coach in all of pro football, right? He goes, that had nothing to do with me. I was lucky enough to be drafted by the worst team that brought in the winningest coach of all time and basically assembled the people around me. I did what I could control, which was running the football. And then they said, well, then from that, your career, you immediately launched from your professional football career to being the Miller Lite guy, right? And he's like, again, he goes, because of my subsequent success with the Dolphins, Miller Lite came to me. He says, I didn't make a phone call. I didn't reach out to them. They came to me and they said, we want you to be the face of Miller Lite. And he goes, well, what does that mean? And they said, we want you to go around drinking beer, smiling, we're going to pay you for it. He's like, well, hell, I think I can do that. Win-win, right? So he did that for a number of years. He said it was great, did this. And he says that came to an end. And his wife goes, well, what are you going to do now? And he goes, I don't know. And he says, because of the success that I had from the exposure from being with Miller Lite, he says, ESPN comes to me and says, would you like to do a hunting and fishing show? And he's like, well, shit, I love to hunt and fish. So absolutely. And they said, we're going to pay you for it. So his point being is that, again, he controlled his attitude. He controlled working hard and doing those things. But he had a lot of things around him that fell into place, and he took advantage of them, right? When Miller Lite came, He said yes. When they came to the hunt, he said yes. When and so he didn't.
He was available.
He didn't look at getting drafted by the Dolphins, the worst team, as being. He said, okay, I'm getting an opportunity. And then he was presented with the best coach, winningest coach, and then he won Super Bowls. And so, going back, not to digress into our conversation, but there's a lot of things that is to control what you can control, maintain a positive attitude, work your ass off, and then hopefully through prayer and faith and all those things, you time together, things fall into place for you, right? And that's really what life is about, right? It's, hope, prayer, faith, hard work, those things, inevitably you will be rewarded. Whether it's in this lifetime or the next, you will be rewarded for that. I promise. It will happen. So, that's really kind of how I try to live my life. Imperfectly, obviously, but that's it.
Well said. Well, there you have it, folks. We have just learned about a great story by Larry Zonk. I love Jim Kick. I love Mercury Morris. I love Larry Little, Gary Apremian, Jake Scott, the whole squad from the undefeated 72 season.
Yeah, absolutely.
This has been a wonderful episode. Folks, you're going to want to listen to it maybe a couple times just to let it sink in. The last couple of episodes that I've been fortunate enough to be part of have been of this ilk and caliber. And Adam, you're so gracious, folks.
Well, Bobby, thank you for having me on. It means a lot to me, and I mean that with sincerity. So, thank you.
Cool beans. Well, there you have it, folks, for Adam Deane. Check him out at AlphaDog9 over on the Instagram platform. Make some friends with him. He's a great guy, as you can hear and have heard. I am your host, Bobby Stein, for the Motiv8d Mindset. And until next time, please, folks, take good care. Thanks for listening. Thanks for your eyeballs and your ear holes. And Adam, you're a rock star. We'll catch up with you.
Brother, back at you, brother. Back at you.
You've been listening to another episode of the Motiv8d Mindset podcast with your host, Bobby Stein. Thank you for tuning in.